very nice to see you all here. Welcome very much to this event where we're really looking forward to, together with you. Sorry, it's just I get very loud now noises in my headset. Maybe I should go to the other side. Okay, now they say it's good. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead. Welcome very much to this event that will focus on, as what you have here, from innovation to impacts, accelerating bioeconomy pathways through climate technologies. My name is Sarah Treyrup. I'm head of technology at UNEP Copenhagen Climate Center in Denmark. That's better now when I have it closer. Yeah, all right. So I'll be moderating this event. At the UNEP Copenhagen Center, we work closely together with the technology mechanism under the Climate Convention, being the Technology Executive Committee and the Climate Technology Center and Network. And for the last 4 years, we have produced what we call a climate technology progress report that presents a status of where we are in terms of how are we progressing on advancing on the climate technologies. This year, the 2025 edition focuses on advancing bio-based technologies in the bioeconomy and takes stock of where we are at in enabling climate technology development and transfer. And this is also a negotiation track here in Belém, as it is at every COP, and we actually have 4 different agenda items on technology. So it's closely linked to the technology negotiations and the work of the technology mechanism under the convention. So I'm gonna multitask here. I'm gonna go to the next slide if I can. Here. So with us here today, we have a very nice representation in the panel. We had invited and had Ambrosio Yobánolo del Real from Chile. However, he is in the negotiations and he sends his warm regards and support for this event, so he's not able to join us. He's also in the steering committee of this Climate Technology Progress Report and has been so from the very start back in 2022. Then we also have Debora Lee, who is the NDC 3.0 coordinator in Guatemala, and also with the, of course, Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. Then we have Elizabeth Gilmore, who is from Carleton University and an associate professor. And then we have Emily Costa Silva from Brazil and from CG. And I'm also very happy that we have Alex Godoy-Faúndez from Chile, who is an associate professor and director of the Sustainability Research Center and Strategic Resource Management at University of Desarrollo in Chile. Sorry for my pronunciation. And last but not least, I'm very happy to introduce to you Macarena Saras, who is from the Climate Change and Ocean Directorate, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Chile. And actually, without further ado, I would like to invite Macarena to say some words here at our opening, and I'll pass the floor on to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anonymous one. I'm not going to use the headphones because I'm listening weird. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. Me to begin by noting science-based decision-making are not abstract concepts. No. For Latin American and the Caribbean, they are practical tools urgently need to strengthen our collective climate action and accelerate technology implementation. Our region is rich in biodiversity, resources, and innovation potential, but we also share structural problems and challenges, unequal access to finance, and limited mechanisms for scaling technologies across borders. Strengthening cooperation means turning these shared challenges into opportunities through knowledge, change, policy coordination, and the creation of regional innovation ecosystems. Chile, science is the foundation of effective climate action. It allows us to prioritize design, and we are applying as a update the technology development and transfer component of the Chile's long-term climate strategy as mandated by our framework law on climate change, which is from the 20... Is it not? You can hear? Okay. This work is being carried out jointly with the Ministry of Science, Technology, Knowledge and Innovation, the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Economy, National Institute. It's very modern, this system, to me. And the National Institute of Industrial Property. This is better? Okay, great. The goal is to build a coherent and adapted framework for technology transfer, one that integrates science, regulation, and financing and innovation. In practical terms, Chile is advancing along several lines that could serve as a reference for regional cooperation. I'm from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so we are not directly in charge of the initiatives related with science. But I'm gonna give some examples from our country. A national repository of climate science and technology, for example, is being implemented, mapping research centers, scientists, technology-based companies, and R&D projects related to mitigation and adaptation. This repository will help to identify our strengths, existing gaps, and opportunities to connect the capacities with emerging needs. Also, a governance model for technology transfer is also being designed, integrating actors from ministries, academia, the private sector, and local governments. The purpose is to respond quickly and coherently to strategic needs, ensuring that technology adoption promotes adaptation, nature-based solutions, and just transition while avoiding new environmental impacts. At the regional level, cooperation is the multiplier that turns national progress into collective impact. We see enormous potential in developing shared regional information platforms that connect national repositories, taxonomies, and innovation systems. This could enhance transparency, reduce duplication, and accelerate the dissemination of technologies adapted to our climatic and socioeconomic realities. There is also room for joint assessment of technology needs and regional demonstration projects, especially in areas such as water management, sustainability, renewable energy integration, and the circular bioeconomy. These are fields where peer learning between countries can be fast and transformative. Financing remains a critical obstacle, as usual. Regional cooperation can help us align efforts with global mechanisms, such as Climate Technology Center and Network, the Systematic Observation Financing Facility, which is the SOF, and now we are negotiating RSO. And in the room, we are, as a Chile, asking for extend the SOF to more countries. So we would like to make it available for more developing countries. And this is one of the issues that we have raised in the room. Also, multilateral development banks, ensuring that countries in Latin America and the Caribbean can access resources to implement technologies and strengthen capacities. Finally, cooperation must go beyond governments because it's essential to strengthen partnerships with universities, civil societies, and private sector, and to foster South-South collaboration to ensure that innovation is inclusively, locally relevant, and socially equitable. In this regard, Chile has been working this year on the launch of a declaration on the role of science in climate policy in Latin America and the Caribbean, which was formalized today. We had the side event in the morning, and we are proposing a regional initiative to strengthen the science policy interface through coordinated, flexible, and collaborative efforts. So we would like to have a coordination between our countries, because it's very necessary for the negotiation as well to have this background and to be also supported by our national scientific committees. So through this initiative, we seek to strengthen the capacity of the government and scientific communities, ensure that policy instruments such as NDC, long-term strategies, etc., are grounded in robust evidence and support national positions in international negotiations under the UNFCCC. So to conclude, our region has the scientific talent, creativity, and natural capital needed to lead in sustainable technologies, but we need a stronger coordination and a shared evidence base to scale up our impact. Chile firmly believes that science-based cooperation can turn climate technology into real solution for people, helping us not only to achieve our mitigation and adaptation goals, but also advance sustainable and equitable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for these opening words, and I think you made so many important points. And I have to say we'll come back to many of these in the next interventions, but also just to comment Chile in the role. I know I follow the technology negotiations very closely as we are speaking here about technology development and transfer. I know the important role Chile is playing in that agenda stream, and that's much, I think, recommendable, so it's much appreciated. And also, of course, I know the activities under the technology mechanism as such with the Technology Executive Committee and the CTCN, and I know how Chile is pushing the agenda on in this area. So I think that's...
Ambrosio is coordinating the G77 as well, our negotiator of technology. He's the coordinator of the G77, so we are very committed with this negotiation.
Thank you very much. So with this, you have a tight schedule, so please thank you so much for joining us here, and don't feel obliged to stay for very long. Of course, we would like you to, but we understand you have to also attend other events. So with this, I would actually like to turn to our next part of this event, and I've actually put up the agenda here, and I'll make a brief introduction to what we call the Climate Technology Progress Report before I hand over to some of the authors who have led the chapters, two of the chapters in this report, and that would be Debbie, Elizabeth, and Alex, talking about the feasibility, and then also on the zooming in on the regional focus with Latin America and Caribbean, and then afterwards having reflections from Emily also on insights of the National Bioeconomy Plan of Brazil. So before I hand over the word, I wanted to again share a few reflections on the Climate Technology Progress Report. So it builds on the whole process that we as UNEP has also established around the emissions gap and the adaptation gap report. So we build on the same model where we work with a number of authors and external reviewers and go through a very intensive project cycle during a year where we work on different topics. So the report has also led to several COP decisions, I would say, recommendations, and we're very happy having key messages in COP decisions from previous years as well. And the report provides then scientific and policy relevant assessments of different aspects and elements of technology development and transfer. We have had a focus on renewable energy, on urban context, and agriculture and water within the African region. And then this year we focus on the bioeconomy, bio-based implementation. Okay, sorry. So this is the structure of the report this year. So as said, we have the introduction, then we have the where we at in terms of technology adoption, which technologies are there, how are they uptaken, what is the maturity of technologies. So we can see there are many technologies there, many technologies exist, they are mature and ready for uptake. We have the assessing feasibility, we'll come more into that. Then we have a chapter on governance and regulations, international cooperation, and then finally the regional chapter. You can also access the report by scanning this QR code. I would say also that we have now started what I think is a good tradition, that last year we made an open call for authors to contribute to the report. So I think we issued that in January or February, and this is also how we get authors on board. So we have a transparent and open process for authors to express, or for experts to express interest to contribute to the report. So the key messages from this report overall are structured into these three main messages. We have key messages from each of the chapter, but basically bio-based technologies are central to climate and nature goals, and a careful adoption of bio-based technologies can reduce emissions, increase climate resilience, restore ecosystems, and benefit local livelihoods. We know that the key barriers to scaling is not the technology itself, it's actually finance and governance that are major barriers causing challenges with the uptake. We also have the regional transitions where the report finds, and Alex will talk more about the different aspects of that, but that the LAC region is positioned really well to become global leaders, or the countries are to become global leaders in the transition on bio-based technologies and the bioeconomy. So here you can see many people involved. We have a steering committee which is also formed by the Climate Technology Center and Network Advisory Board, by the Technology Executive Committee members, and also of a number of experts in addition to those members. Then we actually have 41 lead and contributing authors, and we also have 28 external reviewers, and the report undergoes 2 rounds of external review. So it's quite a comprehensive process that we go through every year, and it feels sometimes a bit, you know, it's an interesting process, and we're happy when we end up with a good result, as we think we have done this year. So actually, without further ado, I would like to invite Debbie and Elizabeth to present on the chapter 3 on feasibility. So Debbie, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Alex and Macarena and Sarah, for having us here. So just to start, this chapter of the feasibility assessment has been there since the first Climate Technology Progress report, which follows the multidimensional feasibility assessment developed in IPCC's 6th assessment cycle, firstly in the special report on global warming at 1.5 C. And the purpose of this feasibility assessment is to go beyond the technical and economic dimensions and also assess sociocultural, institutional, environmental, and geophysical dimensions to get a better rounded idea of what the feasibility is, what are the enablers, what are the different barriers. So when we say that a technology has medium feasibility or low feasibility, that sometimes it's based on 1 or 2 indicators within a dimension and not globally as a whole. So firstly is that achieving scale and equitable outcomes depends a lot on institutional feasibility. The institutional dimension was the one that had more of the low, medium feasibility, mainly because of the barriers that exist in terms of context, national policy frameworks, and the different regulations. What we also did in the chapter was try to look at scales and the big difference between rural and urban scales, especially, for example, in Latin America, and I'm sure that's something that Alex will go into deeper, that while we can talk about bioenergy for electricity generation at the large scale, we also have needs in rural communities for cooking or for just other agricultural productive use applications. So we also go into simple decentralized technologies such as biogas, improved cook stoves, biomass briquettes, and they have high feasibility. But again, what we see throughout it all is that it depends a lot on the scale at which we do things. So some technologies have a high feasibility at a smaller or medium scale, but when we try to escalate to a large scale, then the feasibility decreases because of the competition with other natural resources such as land use and water. So what we see is also that an urgent need, especially in rural areas, to to transition from traditional biomass to cleaner, more modern bioenergy. And while there is a big focus here in Latin America in the report, in the feasibility chapter, we also do regional assessments with Africa. So we can see some similarities between Africa and Latin America, especially in the rural dimension, but also in other technologies. But what we also find, especially when we look at the social-cultural dimension, is that we can achieve bioeconomy and at the same time be inclusive, just, and have a low emissions transitions, especially when we incorporate traditional indigenous knowledge, different indigenous cosmovisions, and include the rural communities within decision making. So we have very strong synergies across mitigation, adaptation, and sustainable development goals with biogas from waste streams. Waste-based biogas is the most viable of the assessed bioenergy technologies, and we have other options like advanced biofuels of like algal biofuels, biohydrogen, with long-term promise, but currently having a financial barrier because they're still too costly. But that can give us a pointer as to what actions we need to take now. So in the medium term, we can have a higher feasibility, and that we really need to integrate bioenergy technologies into broader energy systems to achieve climate resilience and energy securities. Basically here, bringing together the climate goals together with sustainable development goals. So looking at, for example, what is our existing infrastructure, but also how we can combine different types of fuels, like solid, liquid, and gas. And also to remember that the bioeconomy also includes a broad spectrum of bio-based technologies, and of course there's too many to focus on in the chapter, and the chapter only, just like in previous climate technology progress reports, we select the most feasible ones. So here we focus more on bioplastic and biomaterials for buildings, but also because these are the most feasible in the short term, but we also need to remember that there's other biotechnologies that still require more development, that still need to be scaled so the cost can be reduced. So in terms of what we assessed as biomass conversion in rural contexts, as I mentioned earlier, we looked at sustainable agriculture and land use, mainly like agroforestry and forest-based adaptation, and then the bio-based materials. Oh, and also for electricity generation. And Elizabeth will present the results of the feasibility assessment.
And here I was signaling to Debbie to keep going because she was on such a roll. So the results of a feasibility assessment look actually like, this is a complete feasibility assessment of the technologies that Debbie listed along a number of dimensions. And so what really stands out with the feasibility assessment is that we're not just looking at technology readiness, right? We're looking across the economic viability, we're looking at cultural, social elements, institutional elements, and so what this allows us to do then is really point towards where things are ready to go and where we need either more information or more support from a governance and capacity side. And so you can see, for example, with biogas, we show a lot of high feasibility. So biogas in many contexts is something which countries can see as ready to go. It has a high feasibility. But by contrast, when you start to look at some of the other options, you start to see some important low feasibility and medium feasibility aspects, especially in that institutional level. And so these are technologies that could be implemented as part of the bioeconomy, but we're still looking towards strengthening the feasibility here for institutional capacity and legal capacity. I think it's also worth noting that in these assessments, what also stands out is that environmental and ecological dimension. And this really speaks to the numerous functions that biomass has. And so here what we're highlighting is the need to improve our ability to look at biomass across all of its uses, especially with respect to biodiversity and ecosystems. So if on the first slide what I showed you is mitigation technologies, we also conducted a feasibility assessment from a climate adaptation lens. And so here we looked at many of those same technologies, but also some additional technologies that are very key towards adaptation. And so here I'd like to highlight, for example, forest-based adaptation, which is our last row here. And so here we're really leveraging the fact that adaptation can also be supported by biodiversity and nature-based solutions. And there's a lot of high feasibility here, but again, some of those institutional and governance capacities is where we find the gaps. So I think it's now I turn it over to you, Alex.
Thanks. Hello, everyone. I have just 10 minutes. I'd like to say, like my first words, thank you for the Copenhagen Center for the trust and confidence in order to accept me like a writer. So I cannot hear me to myself. Yeah. So, thank you. Hello. Okay. Sorry for. Hello. Now because. Okay, I cannot. I not hear me from myself, so no worries. And I think so. Okay, so that has been a huge challenge for me, because the invitation about the invitation from the Copenhagen Center was okay. And the first chapter was trying to explain what is the bioeconomy. You know, the bioeconomy is a complex concept, because the people is very confusing between circular economy, bioeconomy. Okay, what are you talking about? And right now the challenge was, okay, we need to define bioeconomy, and we need to define the bioeconomy for the mitigation. And that report but my chapter was trying to respond that question in order to say what we are doing here in Latin America and the Caribbean. And you know, and sometimes in too many countries the people say, okay, what Latin America is working on in bioeconomy. And I would like to start to describe in Latin America and the Caribbean. The first minutes, we have an huge assets, natural assets. Indeed, we have an over 40% of the biodiversity is here in the Latin America and the Caribbean, and because we have a biomass and a high biodiversity, we have a fresh water stock, and we can deploy different kind of bio-based value chains throughout the economy, and that's the main assets of the Latin American Caribbean, the biodiversity. The second one is like Devi and Elizabeth described. We have a very good chance in order to include that kind of approaches into our INDC. Why? Because we have different kind of technologies capable to do carbon capture, capable to provide bioenergy, replacing the fuel oils and so on. So we have a very good chance in order to get that kind of approaches and then scale up them and try to include into the NDC in order to links the mitigation and adaptation, because finally that the outcomes of that kind of technology is locally. Finally, that David talked about the rural areas and the local communities, and we can include the indigenous and local knowledge as well. So this is a very good chance in order to scale up and too many actions that we find from the different countries. Like here's just to surprise you. This is the number of the examples throughout the Latin America and the Caribbean, what we find, and what are the key outcomes on any technologies in different countries, because that kind of technologies depend on the specifically landscape that we have in any countries. So in the next slides, what is the good news? The good news or the bad news? We have different kind of policies in different countries, but we don't have the same policies in the same countries. So we need a policy integration into the regions in order to try to collaborate between us, because maybe in Brazil, maybe the focus is on the bioenergy, bioethanol. Maybe in Chile, we are using the biomass for the construction, for example, like Waldo Montesinos is a member of the Scientific Committee on Climate Change, and Chile is trying to propose the using the wood like for the construction materials in order to do carbon capture as well, for example, or bio-based materials and so on. So we need policy integrations, because this is that we are understanding that different kind of markets is looking for in order to transfer money, transfer in finance, in order to try to boost that kind of the actions, in order to try to and use them into the carbon market, for example, into the Article 6. The finalists, we have a very good chance because we can get a sub-regional specialization, because different countries have different landscapes, and the different landscapes have different biodiversity. We have different natural values that we can and get the value from them, and maybe can use them in order to mitigate and alleviate the carbon emissions, and also we can work in the same time for adaptation. Here you can see different kind of technologies about the biomass conversion, for example, the sugar cane, the bioethanol, and so on. We have the carbon capture, for example, and using biochar, or we can use the sustainable agriculture and land use technologies in order, for example, in Chile, it's an agricultural economy, or bio-based materials, for example, using the seaweed in order to replace plastics. So we have institutions. This is the good news. The good news, we have institutions in different countries, in different entities and different kind of governance, in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and so on. But the entities are so different. So despite of we have the institutions, we have too many institutions and working together for the same issue. You need to try to converge all together in order to try to and straighten that's the policies in order to try to create a more straightened and governance system in order to try to boost that kind of technologies and scale up that kind of approaches that right now is working just locally. So that's what is the good news. Like that kind of approaches has been applying locally. We have a very good chance to include the indigenous local knowledge, because too many of and so many actions has been including the local knowledge. For example, when working with native people or the indigenous people and local communities, for example, in the Iceland, for example, we can include that kind of knowledge. We can capture that kind of knowledge, and maybe we can scale up through the countries and different regions, maybe sharing experience and sharing what was the governance behind that we can boost that kind of approaches in order to scale up and maybe exporting that kind of technology for another countries in the global south. And we have a very good chance for the bio-based materials. Just we need to develop the value chain. Right now, we have just maybe 2 or 3 actions in different countries, but we are not putting focus in order to try to strengthen the value chain. And another thing is new challenge. We need to try to standardize and measures, reporting and verification system, because we have different kind of standards. Right now we don't have the same standards for biofuels, for example. Right now we are talking about the aviation biofuels, but we don't have a global standard, but not national standards. And we need to try to keep the coherence between the international law or international regulations, standards, certification, and so on. When we need to try maybe work together in Latin America and Caribbean in order to fix and common standards using the same kind of materials. And finally, bottom line. So what we are recommending for the next 5 years, just we have four priority actions. One is embed the bioeconomy into the climate and development plans, because we need to try to work in mitigation and adaptation as well. And in order to include them into the adaptation plans with measurable targets and trying to develop the measures, reporting and verification systems. The second one is scale up. Scale up that's small and maybe actions and we need to try to forget that this is for rural people. we have a very good chance in order to create a new kind of industrial sector. We have the very good chance in order to develop a new sector based on all biodiversity and all landscape. We need to develop a digital MRB and certification, maybe with regional standards. And finally, we have a very good chance in order to propose something like projects in order to mobilize the finance. And right now we are talking about the Article 6. We are talking about the finance for adaptation and so on. This is a very good chance in order to propose that kind of projects, maybe to be attractive for foreign markets, and maybe driving the flow of the financial system to that kind of technologies, using the inclusion and maybe including the regional local knowledge, maybe, and moving ahead into the SDGs as well. So what we are proposing in that report, we are proposing that kind of things. Maybe I apologize. This is on a small screen, but this is the assets: natural capital, biodiversity. All the IDB banks, World Bank, and so on are talking about natural capitals. We have the natural capital here, we have the indigenous knowledge, and we have the human capital and research and development and research and development entities supporting the research and development. We have a very good scientists indeed here. We have different kind of industrial sectors that we can strengthen, like agroforestry and regenerative agriculture, for example, forestry and bio-based materials, blue economy and agriculture, working in oceans. Like here, my colleague and Camila Fernandez is a member of the scientific committee working in oceans. She's an oceanographer. We have a very good chance to include the blue economy, for example, into the bioeconomy and the biorefineries. Finally, by thinking in bioenergy and biochemicals. And finally, we need three kind of enablers. One, policy, institution, and integration of them. Two, be attracted for the finance and in order to attract the international and finance in order for the Article 6 and so on. And finally, we need right now to integrate all of them in order to create regional standards and about the measured reporting and verification standards in order to try to and propose something like regionally. Okay, so what could be the outcomes? And contribute with jobs and a small business, because finally we need to try to develop and value change, mitigation in order to reduce the greenhouse emissions, contribute with the adaptations, and maybe contributing for the SDGs, reducing the poverty, including the indigenous local knowledge, moving ahead with that new kind of industry, and finally we try to be more attractive for the premium markets in the global north. Thank you so much, and apologize for my English. I am thinking in Spanish and Portuñol and English and Spanish as well. So thank you for coming, and thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to collaborate with the Copenhagen Center.
Thank you so much, Alex, and the pleasure is on our side. Yes. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to you, Emily, and here would be the clicker and the mic.
Are you raising?
Oh, no noise. No.
Okay, let's try. No, I think it's working. Can you listen me? Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Sarah for the invitation and the UNEP CCC technology team. I was part of the steering committee of the report, and I saw all the hard work that was made. So congratulations for the report. I am Emily from the Center for Strategic Studies and Management, a science, technology, and innovation policy-oriented think tank in Brazil. We are linked with the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. And since bioeconomy is a huge topic in Brazil, we also have an observatory in our activities, the Bioeconomy Observatory at CGE. The observatory has a mission to support the development of the Brazilian bioeconomy by providing strategic intelligence to inform especially decision makers, but also in other sectors. And under the observatory, we are supporting the government with the National Bioeconomy Development Plan. But before talking about our National Bioeconomy Development Plan, I will talk about the National Bioeconomy Strategy that was launched in 2024 and has the purpose to coordinate and implement public policies aimed at developing the bioeconomy together with civil society and the private sector. Our strategy in Brazil has 7 targets. The first one is to promote national, regional, and local development. The second, promote forest and social biodiversity economies. The third one is related to transition to a low carbon and climate resilient economy. And the next ones are related to the development ecosystems of innovation. And the next one is really important because it's developed to the national bioeconomy information. So here we are trying to create bioeconomy databases and also integrate the bioeconomy data to support the decision makers, and also not only decision makers but also the academia, the civil society to have science with data oriented. So to implement the strategy, we are supporting the government with technical and methodological information. CGE, as a think tank, are supporting the government with technical and methodological information in this process of the planning of the plan of the National Bioeconomy Plan. So the components of we have a very unique and inclusive commission, national commission. The presidency is divided with 3 ministries in Brazil: the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Environmental, and also the Finance Ministry. It's a rotating term. We also have a plenary with 16 ministries plus Embrapa, the National Agriculture Organization in Brazil, and more 18 civil society representatives from all sectors. We are in this plan. There is also a provision to have 6 technical chambers. One is already working. The financial technical chamber is already ongoing with the Minister of Finance. And I had one, okay. So this is a policy-oriented process. We are using the policy-oriented policy-oriented methodology to support the government with this plan, and we have 8 missions. The first 2 are related to the social bioeconomy. So we are the idea is that the plan is to be very inclusive with local communities and very social with indigenous people and indigenous technologies and local technology as well. So the first 2 are very focused on social bioeconomy. The 3, 4, and 5 are related to respond the bioindustry demand, especially in health and well-being, full utilization of biomass, and the mission 5 we already have a target there. For the next 10 years, the Brazilian government has the goal to increase the use of biofuels in 70% in the next 10 years. And the mission 6 and 7 are related to biomass, but it's important to emphasize that here we are not including the conversion of the native vegetation. So it's including the use of degraded land or to increase the production of biomass in the land that is already being used. And the last one is related to vegetation recovery, the mission 8, to forest and water. So yeah, that's it. This is just to summarize how Brazil is boosting in a very inclusive way the bioeconomy for the next 10 years. The Penny de Bio, that's how we call it in Portuguese, will be launched in February next year, but it was already announced here at COP30. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Emily. And I think this is a really nice, we could almost call it like a case example for what we also talk about throughout the report. So I think this is very nice. And of course, this is beyond being a case example. This is a real world example of how things can be done to move forward on the bioeconomy strategy. So that's really excellent. Actually, I think all four of you are really excellent representatives from, the key contributors of this year's report, and we couldn't have done it without you. Emily as sorry, I have a lot of noise in my ears when I speak. Steering committee member, and of course Elizabeth, Debbie, and Alex as lead authors. So that's, thank you very much to all of you. And I don't know if there are any burning questions from the floor. Otherwise, I think I will simply wrap up this event. And thank you all here who have contributed, and also to all of you who stayed all the way through. Thank you so much. And I wish you just a very nice rest of the day. Thank you very much, everyone.